Hi everyone, welcome to the APAC AI user group. Today is a little bit special. We're going to have a little bit of a short user group, and we're going to talk about Microsoft Build, some news coming up, and what are the AI highlights at Microsoft Build. And I hope you're going to like this format, and maybe we can do this similar for Google or Amazon if you like this kind of special episode. So I'll add up David and Somi. Hi, everyone.
Hey, JK, how are you?
Great. Should we start with what are the most favorite parts of the Build conference? Let's start with Somi.
Hi everyone, thanks JK. They covered quite a variety of topics, but the one that were related to AI and also our user group, and myself particularly, because I'm all for low code, no code solution. I really enjoy introducing a new, Power FX, which is based on the Excel, Microsoft Excel. So having that feature included to Power Platform, it's going to make it much easier for the non-technical, or let's say citizen users or citizen developers, to be able to use those features and rely on those features. So it will make the application building more quicker, and I guess that will add a lot of value to the Power Platform features that we have. So I really enjoyed that one. I kept looking into it, and I'm keen to use it in my application. We have quite a few projects at work, and I guess that will add a lot of value to our customers. That was the main one that I enjoyed. There were quite a few on the custom vision as well, but I'll let the rest to cover those areas. But I guess Power FX was one of the key highlights for me personally, because I've been using Power Platforms for quite some time, and I guess it's really handy.
Yeah, we have seen some interesting changes for the Power Apps, and we're going to cover news about that as well. And it's really exciting for anyone who just want to get apps up and running without needing to have a developer, or not necessarily that, just being able to do some changes and stuff like that, or even build it by themselves. Anyways, David, what would be your favorite one?
The main one from my point of view, and it's something that I follow closely in my path, has been the release of Apache Spark version 3 within Azure Synapse Analytics, which is amazing. It comes as well with a new version of Delta Lake 0.8. We're still behind, so the latest release for Delta Lake is 1.0, but definitely huge progress from that point of view within the Apache Spark engine in the Azure platform. So I'm really happy with that. It comes, you can imagine. So we were around, I think we were at least 1 year behind. If you look at Azure Databricks, Azure Databricks or Azure Databricks, that they were using the latest version, the 3.1, for more than a year. So I think that people who have been using Azure Synapse Analytics or Azure Apache Spark, we've been waiting for this for a long time, as well for the new version of Delta Lake. Again, that we're still a little bit behind with the version of Delta Lake and Apache Spark, but from what I've heard from Microsoft, because this is right now in public preview, they might be able to push a few more versions up before the general release of the version 3 of Apache Spark.
Yeah, that sounds good. And there's a couple of services that we thought that was going to be locked away, like for instance, text analysis for health, but they actually opened it up for everyone when they pushed it to GA. So that's pretty exciting. So it seems like all of the AI work they are doing, even if it's private at the time of working, it might actually be available for everyone. And what my favorite one from Build, funnily enough, wasn't quite introduced in the Build, not officially, but it's the ML.NET now being supported on ARM. Now, technically speaking, it was already supported on ARM beforehand, but it was only consumption of models. So if you pre-trained a model, you could put it, say, on Blazor application client side, and then you can do classification, regression, and stuff like that. But now you can also do training in Blazor client side, for instance, on an ARM machine. So iPad can do machine learning training in C# in browser. So that is really exciting. And hopefully that is going to be extended to Xamarin and all of the other platforms. So we will be able to buy some Raspberry Pis and have like a cluster of Raspberry Pis doing machine learning training in C# in ML.NET. So I'm quite excited for that. All right, so what I'm going to do now is, let me move the screen, and I'm going to go through some of the news. David and Somi, you're welcome to add any feedback. But this is kind of like a overview of what happened on the Build conference.
This is the summary of the summary, right? This is the best things that we got out from the summary of attending the event.
Although not quite just summary, I actually went through some of the cognitive services and and checked if they sneakily added something to what's new. And there might be a couple of things they haven't talked about on Build conference that they have sneaked into the what's new section. So hopefully we'll see if anyone spots anything that wasn't announced. All right, so I think I'll get started with a really, really big news, which is GPT-3. And Microsoft is using GPT-3 on currently PowerFX applications to do, as far as I remember, is you can do queries on text, and then you get back answers. And the reason why GPT is said as such an important thing is this machine learning is actually being classified as too dangerous for general public because it's so good. It can generate fake news. It can generate actual articles based on a couple of entries. Even Google introduced this GPT-3 integration with their products, where they can just make up, okay, tell me about a plane's phobia toward water, and the plane actually explained why it's afraid of water. You can do things like that because it's been trained by about 0.5 terabyte of actual text from the internet, and it's gathering all of that knowledge to be able to have some understanding of what you're asking the machine learning to do things. And the reason why is this super exciting is you can also do the other way around. You have your own text, and you can make then questions in natural language to get some information from your text. So if you're doing an FAQ, you can do a natural question, and the GPT-3 with all of that 0.5 terabyte of data of knowledge tries to figure out what you're actually trying to ask. So then something like a semantic search can find it in the text, and it gives you the actual correct answer. So this is why GPT-3 is super exciting. At the moment, you're not allowed to use it directly as part of OpenAI organization. That they are allowed only to be used in certain products that is ethical. And Microsoft has added this to this PowerFX tooling. So you can now use it and you can do questions and get answers. So that is a bit of a long news for that. But it's important to understand that this is really important, because once this is available for bots and all of the other services, all of the sudden asking natural questions will be significantly better than it was before.
Do you see this? Sorry, JK. Do you see this service being applied to multiple products within the Azure ecosystem near in the future?
I am very certain of that. Now, the question here is how far is they going to push this? Because one of the ethical issue with GPT-3, and one of the reasons why there's not such a widespread release of it, is you can potentially make an bot that, for instance, calls your phone that is convincible enough to be a human in terms of how they respond to your questions. And that's, in one way, this is really good, but on the other way, it could be also problematic. So they're trying to limit at the moment and see what would be the impact and how can they roll out this AI safely.
So we're not going to do. We're definitely not going to see anytime soon this as an Azure cognitive services, right? That we can explore.
So I think for text analysis, it's going to be very soon. Text analysis is actually, this is the one over here. It's going to deprecate its Q&A service for text analysis service. And what it's going to be able to do is, in Q&A, if you imagine you basically uploaded your whole FAQ, and you have multiple sections of FAQ, and when you ask a question, it either gives you the whole section of FAQ that is related to your question, or tries to pick out the right part of the FAQ for that question. Now, the text analysis service is going to push this a little bit further, well, depending on your use case, because what it's going to be able to do is you have a text and you have a couple of questions, and you'll be able to ship this to text analysis in one go without training and get the response back right away. So if you have a A4 paper, or maybe even a research paper, and you have a couple of questions for it, you don't have to upload this research paper, train it, and then use several different APIs to be able to use it. You'll be able to just call one API call and get the answers right back, which is really exciting for those type of questions where the text is constantly changing, but the question is the same, or both are changing constantly.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Yeah, but on the other hand, if you have static FAQs, I'm not sure if this actually is going to replace it, or they're going to have an alternative where you're going to be able to pre-train some of the text so that you can quickly get, so that you don't have to send the whole text over and over.
I think at this stage, the existing QA Maker settings will stay as is, and for the newer version or the new feature, we can reuse on these new question answering services as part of the text analytics. But I guess later on, there will be a migration plan for those, or if we can adjustment for the existing one that they can reuse this new feature. But this is really cool. I guess this is going to add a lot of values, because there was a project that I recently worked on, and there was a lot of needs in QA, and they had challenges they had like big content they didn't know how to match or maintain. Cost aside, there are challenges and complexities to handle those, but I guess having this feature and having one API to handle that for us, I guess that's a big step forward.
Yeah,
and I noticed that they added a few additional languages to the existing. I guess currently it supports 90 plus. They added 9 more to it, which is again good, because you can reach broader content and you can reach broader community. For the bigger organization and companies that are nationals or around the globe, you have the options to translate and provide the same services from one particular, let's say, QA Maker that you have, or the questioner that you have, which is really good, I guess.
Yeah, I think this is also going to remove those frictions where you're like, well, I don't know all of the content I'll need questions for, and I don't want to constantly retrain the model. I just want to have an answer for this particular text with this question. And this is going to be less friction. And about the languages, what we've seen is that a lot of the services have gotten more language support. Only highlighted here for the translation, for translator, that it has 9 more languages, but I believe a lot more cognitive service have more languages. But one interesting thing is that I guess I kind of thought that they support, but I actually never tried, is actually document translations. So you could just say that you have a document for government, and they're fine with unofficial translations. They just want to know roughly what the document is about. Now you'll be able to just upload the whole document to the translator and translate it into a different language, which is much better than trying to copy paste the whole document into translator, translate it, and then I guess
do it again. Yeah.
Just send them a plain text Word document, which, funnily enough, is sort of what the translator are actually doing. They're not, well, some of them, they're not actually replacing the text inside the document. They are giving a side-by-side document where you can then, which is plainly formatted, but in the same line, so people could cross-reference the original and the translation. But this one, as far as I checked, is it can replace inside the document. So you can actually have a similar format than before, and you can just ship it to your government or whoever needs to have that document translated. But this is not going to remove the translators, but it's going to give you, when you don't actually need a real translator, it's going to give you a good tool to be able to just quickly translate documents, especially if it's something internal where you have a lot of documents and you need to translate in different languages, and it's just for the internal people to be able to read what is the contents of the documents. You don't need to parse the document and then translate the plain text.
Yeah. So you're saying that with this service, we don't need to go line by line translating what we have in each line of the document, right? That the service is going to pick it up as a whole, not line by line.
Yeah. Now, the APIs for reading Word documents is fairly straightforward, all things considered. But it's still, you don't know where visually the text is coming from when you read it from the APIs, and you might be trying to translate text that actually doesn't have particular meaning, like headings and stuff like that, but not the content. Well, you'll need to figure out what is what in order to give value, and this one just replaces everything in place, so you don't have to worry about that.
Good evening, everyone.
Hi, Sarah.
Good morning. We have a special guest. Hey, Sarah. Hi.
No bad, thank you. No, it's been interesting following basically what's been released recently. I think the one I'm looking forward to is the video analytics and the spatial analysis, because I know a couple of clients that I have currently who would be very, very much into that sort of technology, and it'll be very useful for them. So I'm quite keen to learn more about that as we go.
Yeah, and one cool thing, well, not just one cool thing, many cool things about the video analyzer is it used to be either you analyze live video and you get live stats, or you're using video indexer, which analyze the whole bit, and then it dumps all of the data to you. Or the third option, which was introduced this year, which is a spatial analysis. There were all like 3 different APIs. and you need to use different endpoints and all of that stuff. But now it's everything starting to merge into a one video service called Azure Video Analyzer. So you can now go through one documentation to basically learn about all three of them. So that is really cool. And if you haven't seen all of them, this really cool. It's like combining a lot of different cognitive services like speech to text analysis, and then text analysis on that recognized text. So you can basically do keyword search. You can try to figure out when they were talking about specific object or person or place. You can do all of that. As well as you have speaker recognition, so you can basically figure out, okay, when was Satya Nadella talking, when was, say, Scott Hanselman talking, and all of that stuff. And I'm not sure, I don't think they have that yet, but it would be awesome if you would be able to find out when they're making a joke. So maybe you could do then a compilation of Scott Hanselman's stand-up comedy jokes on Build conferences. That would be a very interesting side project to do. But besides all of that, there's a couple of other things this supports. Spatial analysis is a very interesting thing that came this year. And the reason why it's special is because it can recognize not only people, but also objects in space through a 2D camera. So it knows roughly the actual size of how big a person is supposed to be, or how big a car is supposed to be, and things like that. And it can place it in the 3D space. So what that means is if you want to, say, have a security footage and you want to record, say, identification or stuff like that, only when a person comes in a specific area, that's what the spatial analysis allows you to do. Not just that, what you can do is it can even recognize what a person is wearing. So, for instance, on the right, we have a person wearing, like, what's that blue apron? Well, what would you call this? Apron, right? It can recognize, hey, this person is wearing a blue apron, so it's an employee, whereas everyone else is not wearing a blue apron, so they're non-employees. And you can even see that over here, we have different colors of each individual person based on how away they are from the shops. And they can even count how long they waited and whether or not they were actually standing where they were supposed to stand. Like, if you can see, the main purpose of this spatial analysis is to see if people are actually standing on the markers on the floor. So they can see whether people are obeying the COVID rules. Another implementation that I have seen, I'm not sure if they have publicly announced that sample, but it's a car parking. Basically, they can see whether a car park is empty or not with the spatial analysis. They can figure out not just whether a car park is open or not, they can figure out which car parks are filled, and not just whether they're filled with a car, but whether a person is over there or it's been obstructed by something else. So it's a really cool project. And the coolest thing about it is you can just kind of draw on the image, and based on how it sees the place, you can try to figure out how would this place look in 3D without depth sensing cameras. So I'm really excited for this. One main reason for this, why I'm super excited, is because we can make sure that we're not over-recording things. For instance, we need to secure a part of, say, a factory or stuff like that, or a place where it's a mix public and private place, and we don't really want to record the public place, but we kind of need to have the camera in that kind of direction. And here you can make sure that we're only recording the stuff that happens on the private part when a person comes in. So if that makes sense. And for instance, if they do a felony, you can then track it how they went into the public space. So then police can potentially use it to identify a person, but you don't actually have to record every single person that ever went through that public space, only when, for instance, a felony happens on the private property.
I wonder just on the quality of the video that you would need to achieve that, whether it's, whether they've built in fault tolerance, so the quality of it just can be quite bad, but and still pick up that information.
So the examples that I have seen, they are like 640 by 480. Some are slightly better. So it's not enough to, for instance, to do facial recognition and stuff like that, not by a long shot, but it is enough for do skeleton tracking. So that's what they're using. And for cars, for instance, I have seen an example where the camera is ridiculously low res, but it still works. And apparently it works like 98% of the time. So yeah, it really looks very promising. And yeah, hopefully this is going to also work offline. So we won't need to worry about sending too much information outside of our internet and needing to store any information that is not required. So that's going to be privacy. So it's going to be with privacy in mind.
Yeah, just to highlight there as well, it's true that even sometimes that the video could have better quality. It doesn't mean that the model is going to do better with that video.
Yes. Well, yeah. For skeleton tracking, you don't really actually need that much of resolution. Just think about that Kinect version 1, the Xbox 360 one, I think it was 320 by 240. It's only with the Kinect V2 that we got 640 by, I think it was like a weird resolution of 480 or no, 420, I think, or something like that. Wasn't quite the standard resolution. But yeah, that was Kinect V2 was actually pretty accurate, and it didn't really need like a full HD camera. So you can do pretty good. You can get pretty good results on low res cameras. But yeah, you might get more false positives.
Yeah, I don't see that. That's what I don't see my putting a lot of 4K videos through video analyzer. It's going to take forever, and it's not going to be as cost effective.
Yeah, well, I know that for facial recognition, they actually recommend you to reduce it to a certain resolution before sending it. So done a full talk about all of that stuff. But what I'm really hoping is that we actually will never need to send all of that information, so that you actually record things when it's really necessary. So for instance, if somebody is, say, in an area that's not supposed to be, they're not employee, you could recognize this with offline recognition, and then you start recording rather than recording every single thing, if that makes sense. Yeah, I think, Sarah, you tried to say something?
Oh, no, I was going to say, mostly when you were talking about privacy, so you don't need to send everything up to the cloud basically these days, because you can run most of your ML models on the edge IoT device and store the information on the IoT device itself. That
is true, although for facial recognition, the last time I checked, it was in private beta. And as much as I tried to get it so that I could give customers information, is this actually privacy safe? Is this going to send any information out? I wasn't able to test it. So that's something that I really want to have a look and see, can we actually make, for where it's necessary, not like China where we have everything monitored, just the critical things, like for instance in hospitals you don't want people to be able to muck around expensive health equipment, that you can actually make sure that there's no unauthorized person where you have expensive and sometimes life-saving equipment.
Yeah, not true. True.
This is just for the viewers as well. This service has been it was video indexer, right? Part of the cognitive services stack. It has been around already a few years. I think it has been one of those services that has been a little bit undercover. There hasn't been that much marketing, but it's one of the most amazing services that is there actually.
Yes, that is kind of correct. And the reason why this is kind of correct is it was part of the HoloLens geospatial service, but it was marketed mostly for HoloLens only. And only recently they're starting to really promote it for everything else, not just for HoloLens. So yeah, you might be right. It might be just a change of marketing, and they're basically selling the same tech as before.
Yeah. No, but with more, let's be honest, right? So this uses Azure Cognitive Services APIs, and the Azure Cognitive Services API, they have improved the tone during the past couple of years, right? So now we get better functionality here.
Yeah, that's true. And I think they started with HoloLens because HoloLens without these features is not particularly useful. And once they figure out how to actually do the same thing with a 2D camera, which they probably have managed to do by HoloLens recording the depth sensing space as well as the color space, and then do machine learning to try to figure out how you can figure out the depth of space just by color image. And then they decided, okay, now we are comfortable shipping this, and now you can use this in various places. What I'm kind of hoping is I will be able to use this for our reception. We basically have like a dashboard where somebody comes in front of the camera and they see their own data. What I'm hoping for is that we're not sending any data outside, and that not just that, but that we can ensure that we're not trying to recognize anyone who wouldn't be wanted to be recognized by their proximity. We're kind of trying to do this with offline face detection, which basically just uses an algorithm to try to figure out, is there a face in the picture? And then based on the sizing and the location, we say, nah, I don't recognize that face. It's not indirectly enough toward the camera. But obviously, if somebody has a really big face, for instance, or for some reason it recognizes like a really big face, it may recognize it to be closer than they actually are. And then we would try to recognize them even though they're in location and distance where we wouldn't otherwise recognize it. And something like this would allow us to prevent this kind of scenarios.
That's a good point.
Yeah. So it's kind of you're getting more power that could potentially cause privacy issues, but with its power, if everything works offline, you can actually improve privacy, which is kind of quite intuitive. But hopefully we're going to get to a place where we can really safely use this technology without needing to worry about abuse. Yeah. Anyways, we talked about a lot about this. Let's go a little bit more, how do you say, positive. And there is a text analysis API. They added some new things, what we mentioned before, custom question answering, which we said earlier. But what they also have added is the release of text analysis for health. So if I go to, excuse me, quick start, where is it? No, I totally blanked out. I think it's... I was always able to find it right away until now. Now I'm completely blanked out. Anyways, what allows you to do is now you can directly ask health questions, and it will basically recognize doctors' terminology. So what that means is if you're developing an app for health, they will be able to leverage text analysis to be able to then pinpoint when the doctor is talking about symptoms, when they're talking about what might have caused something, or when they're talking about particular diseases or stuff like that. You will be able to use text analysis to analyze that and try to get some useful report for the doctors. Like, for instance, if you have a full history of a patient and they're interested, for instance, whether this patient had, say, some family history that could negatively impact a surgery. Now, instead of going through the whole history of the patient, they might be able to just ask the text analysis for health. Has this patient had history of X, Y, Z? Which could really improve how the medical things are happening today.
Yeah. I think if you expand responsible use of AI, you might find that section that you were looking for
from
there. Yeah.
I guess this is going to be really useful nowadays with the whole vaccination going on. Whenever you want going to GP to like get the permission to go and do the vaccination, they ask whether you have any underlying history or issues. And I guess having this feature attached to your medical history will be a good feature that you can get the response quite quickly. And I guess, but that requires a bit of underlying and background work to get to that point. But I guess it's a good feature to be added, because people like going to different GPs, different doctors, different clinics, and having one central location. And I guess in the past few years, Australia has started doing and centralizing all the information in one place. And I guess with this feature, they can like get to the point or get to the answers right away.
Yeah, and what I also like to see is basically they also give you do not use scenarios, and you can really you can start thinking about, okay, I want to do X, Y, Z with this scenario, and not only you're now able to see, okay, can I actually do this scenario? You might get some advice whether you should do that scenario. Which is something we don't talk too much in AI. Like in some cases, it's fine to do certain things, but only if you store data correctly, if the purpose of doing it is right and stuff like that. Where there's obviously things that are completely no-go, no matter how you approach it.
Yeah.
All right, so let's move on. So we covered quite a bit. Now, another interesting thing is the Form Recognizer 2.1. Now, they haven't done too much updates to this, but what I have understand from this one is you'll be able to now scan regular documents, and it's going to give you better results, whereas previously it just gave you, if you imagine just, I found this section and it had this text in it. Now it might be able to say, I found a table of contents, and I had this in. I have found a table. Well, obviously previously found table as well, but it might be able even to find things like when you're listing things, or when you're talking about, when you're showing like a ID of a person at the end, for instance. We're doing this frequently with spec reviews when we're sending to clients, and we're saying these are the people that can work on the project. So they are doing some interesting things to be able to get more valuable information from the existing documents. And another thing is, if you are passing the document manually via the form recognize and analyze feature, which can be used against any document, you're now getting some ideas. Excuse me. When you get a section of the text, the heading is now separate. So you now can say, okay, this is a section of the text, and this text has a heading, rather than have a heading being a separate part of the text in an array, and then have the text underneath as a separate thing. So you would need to write essentially code to figure out, okay, this heading belongs to this text. Does that make sense?
Yep.
Yeah.
It was in preview, and recently now it's in GA, right?
Yeah. Previously, it recognized each block of text separately. So, for instance, it would probably recognize this as an entire block. But for instance, if I added some spaces, it would recognize this as a separate block of text.
That's good. More smart.
Yeah, and now if we do this, for instance, it will tell you this is the heading for this text.
Yeah.
So that's a pretty cool thing. So if you're writing application to try to figure out what's happening with document, now this is much more easier. Now, next one is the Azure Metric Advisor. Now, this one is interesting for the reason where, you know how you have the Azure Cognitive Services anomaly detection, which essentially what it does is you feed in information. It could be, mostly flat. It could be, fluctuating, say a heartbeat. Heartbeat would be a good example of constantly fluctuating, but in a specific rhythm. And anomaly detection would be able to figure out, okay, when it's no longer following that kind of pattern. So you could potentially recognize some problems with the heart. Now, with the Azure Metrics Advisor, it's kind of a built on top of anomaly detection. And what it actually gives you is kind of a UI where you can track things happening rather than you needing to write that UI for yourself. And it does a real life tracking of what's going on. And what a cool thing about this is, rather than you needing to supply training data and real data and then train it and then do a lot of testing to make sure that it always works perfectly and updating your training data if things are changing and stuff like that. Here you can actually fix it on the fly in the UI. If it detects anomaly where there shouldn't be an anomaly, you say, yeah, that's okay. Or if there's no anomaly and there should be anomaly, you can now fix it in the UI. And that's the power of the Azure Metric Advisor. It's basically something that is built on top of many different cognitive services in a way that you don't have to worry about how you configure the cognitive services. You just use this as a full package. And if anyone used Application Insights, that's Application Insight essentially is kind of like that, but it's specialized for the applications.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think this is going to be really, really interesting because it requires a little knowledge to implement it. And you can give this to your boss potentially, and they can, or someone else, and they can keep track on if something goes wrong and then call the right people to fix it, rather than having a person constantly on call and looking at the graphs all day. All right, so the next one. So here I have linked that I'll supply to the two talks. So all of this news over here, they kind of been talked about in these two talks: build intelligent application infused with world-class AI, and ask the expert, Azure Cognitive Search and its semantic capabilities. This Azure Cognitive Search is really interesting. I haven't gone too in depth, but it essentially allows you to it allows you to not only use natural language to search text, and it allows you to also do fuzzy search. You can kind of quantify your data. But I'll need to have a watch for this one again to fully grasp all of the features. But yeah, we are now going beyond the search. We not just, I want this, but now you can actually ask questions that kind of requires the machine to think about the answer. We have a couple of questions, I think. We have Mohammed saying, nice. And could you tell me what is the agenda of this video? Yes, so the agenda is a little bit freeform. This is kind of like a special episode for the Build conference. So we kind of more like roundtable conversation about the announcements that were made on Build conference. And we are actually very close to the end. So if anyone has some cool things that they want to share about the Build conference, let us know. Or if you have any questions for anything that we have talked about so far.
A quick reminder for everybody as well that you can still go on access a lot of the videos from Microsoft Build on demand. You just need to go to the Microsoft Build webpage. You still need to register, and then you'll be able to access all the on-demand videos.
Yeah, and we made this a little bit more free formatted because there's a lot of things to talk about. And also another reason is Build happened last week. So making a presentation about all of the features that happen would be pretty difficult if we would actually have to have a full weekend time to make a presentation ready. And hopefully this gives you just a little bit a glimpse into new technologies that are being released on the Build regarding AI. And if you haven't had time to watch Build, you can now basically cherry pick what you want to learn more about on the Build. And Build usually doesn't delete the videos, so once they're public, you'll be able to access them even a year from now. All right, so we have two more sections to go. So machine learning. If anyone uses PyTorch Enterprise, you can now use it on Azure. And I mentioned previously that ML.NET will run on ARM, not just the consumption, which is something that you could do right now, but also training. So this is going to come with .NET 6. And lastly, Azure Spark, David.
Yeah, definitely. We couldn't miss this one, right? So last week we had one of the two most amazing events within the data space. So we have, Microsoft Build, it does cover a lot of different other things, right? But at the same time, we had the Data and AI Summit. So it was not fair for many of us, who wanted to attend the two events at the same time. So the most important thing about this update actually is that now we have Apache Spark version 3 running in Azure. You can use that with Azure Synapse Analytics. Go and spin up a node that runs that version, and it comes with Delta Lake 0.8. What happened at the same time that Microsoft Build released the version 3.0 for Apache Spark with Delta Lake 0.8, at the same time in the Data and AI Summit, they released the version 1 for Delta Lake. So I think that hopefully what I've heard as well, Microsoft is going to try to push new updates for this version of Apache Spark before it becomes generally available. But we just recovered 1 year. So for those one who were using Apache Spark in Azure Synapse Analytics or in Azure, so we were using the version 2.4, which was 1 year old, right? So that means that we jumped all the way from around June 2020 was when they released the version 3.0 for Apache Spark. So right now we are up to date, only a couple of versions behind, but hopefully this time Microsoft builds something that is released for them actually to keep up with the new versions for Delta Lake and Apache Spark. Which it means, what it means from an AI point of view, it means that as the Apache Spark version improves, you'll get a lot of new set of libraries that you can use for AI and machine learning, as well as new capabilities even within the Apache Spark cluster. So you're going to be able to use more power within the GPU offering within your nodes in the Apache Spark engine. So definitely what I've seen actually is that the foundation for Apache Spark that is open source. So they're pretty much every 2 or 3 months they are releasing a new version. So hopefully we're within the Microsoft space, the product team is able to keep up with all these updates, and we don't need to wait another year to get the latest versions. That's it.
Yeah, and just so that I understand Apache Spark for everyone, this is basically you're getting data, for instance, like data lake, where you can have a massive amount of data, and Apache Spark can then do machine learning, for instance, on their data and processes their data however you want the data to be processed, right? It's kind of a compute platform. Is that correct?
That's it. So Apache Spark comes with all the famous machine learning libraries like MLlib and Pandas and data frames and all the libraries that data scientists is going to use on their day by day work. All those libraries, they are part pretty much of the Apache Spark engine that you have available there in Azure.
Yeah, we got Saraf.
Quick question. Did the Azure PubSub get announced as part of Microsoft Build? Because that enables you to do real-time services, right? Real-time data ingestion. And how will that be affected by Spark?
Yeah, I haven't looked at directly exactly what PubSub is made of, but what I understand is basically it's like Azure Signal R, but lower level. But I'm not 100% sure if Azure Signal R is using PubSub, or that's kind of a fork away from Azure Signal R and just allows it to do a more low-level real-time communication.
Yeah, because it'll be interesting to see, because Google have their own product that's, funnily enough, named PubSub, that does real-time alerts into a data warehouse. So I'm just curious as to whether the Azure PubSub matches up with what Google is doing, basically.
Yeah, when I looked at the source code and all of that stuff, it looked very similar to Azure Signal R with basically namespaces and classes renamed. So if you used Azure Signal R, you would be very familiar with PubSub. But to my understanding, you lose some of the redundancy and some of the resiliency on the connection. If I understand it correctly, so you need to make sure yourself that the packages are being delivered. So it's kind of going from HTTP protocol to UDP protocol when you compare Azure SignalR and PubSub.
Yeah, but would that not be different than to an event? Well, we can probably take this conversation offline, but I'm just wondering if it's going to be similar to event hubs.
Yeah, I'm really curious. Yeah, I'm really curious about it as well. I might actually be wrong on the data loss. It might just be that it's far more barebone, and you might need to implement some of the things yourself. But what we found is that essentially the API is almost exactly the same as Azure SignalR. And after looking at it for half an hour, we're actually using an Azure SignalR project right now, and we tried to figure out what makes sense to move to that. And I think we came to a conclusion that no, Azure SignalR is still better for what we're doing. But yeah, we don't know all of the details about it.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
All right. So with that, do we have any questions on the YouTube? Unless anyone wants to add.
I don't see any. I'm just looking at the.
You seem to have someone shouting questions.
Yeah, if you guys have any questions when you watch the video, let us know. Feel free to reach us. Any of us will be able to help you.
Yeah, and we're going to share this on this list over here. We might need to modify it a little bit because YouTube doesn't support hyperlinks, so we'll just need to replace them with URLs. And yeah, with that, anyone else want to add anything?
Can users get it from the Meetup site? Can we post it there?
Oh yeah, we can put it on Meetup.
That's a good idea. Yeah.
Well, with that, maybe it's a good time to finish off. So let me quickly Google Meetup APAC AI user group, and let us know if you like to have this kind of format for news for big conferences where we might get a lot of information coming from, and have it like a week after they happened, or would you prefer to have a regular session, or maybe you would be happy to wait, for instance, a month to get a better a more like a PowerPoint presentation style of what happened on Microsoft Build. Let us know, and also join us at meetup.com. We are currently a little bit shy of 500 people. So we are currently 490, 493. So we're breaking 500 members soon. And yeah, we're going to announce the next session soon. And with that, I hope you have a really good weekend. And thank you for watching.
Thanks, JK. Thank you all.